No, Andrew, I don't think it's either or. But I think we all have to recognize that the circumstances in British Columbia and around the world today with the forestry sector are very different than they were. There will also always be a role for commodity-based forest industry. The question is, how can we supplement that? How can we find ways to keep fiber where it belongs, which is in the Robson Valley? And so it's not a matter of either or. At the moment, the commodity-based industry is struggling. It is devastated when you think about where it sits globally. And that's not, if it was just British Columbia that was facing these challenges, perhaps we could point to government policy. But in fact, there's a lot of factors, including the U.S. housing market. All of those things are impacting our ability to have a sustainable forest sector as we conventionally know it. So the answer to your question is, no, it's not a replacement for a mill, but it's a way of supporting communities that are going through devastatingly difficult times, and the forest industry has been very hard hit, unprecedented.
The forest industry has been really hard hit, and so I guess the question is, when the forestry industry does pick up again, we all know it's cyclical, everybody in the room does. What is the conditions? Will there be a mill in Valemount? And here's my question for the candidates. Do you see forestry in BC in a way that supports small communities like this, or is it just take the logs wherever you want and find something else to do, casino or something else?
Well, first of all, I appreciate your passion about making sure that when the forest industry does rebound, and it will, and there are, little glimmers of hope. Even this morning, looking at some of the situations in the U.S., we are seeing a glimmer of hope. We want to work with communities to try to find a way to create a forest industry that is good for today and into the future. We're talking about value added. We're talking about using waste. We're talking about silviculture. We're talking about design and innovation. So Andrew, as you know, we're trying to find a way through difficult times to supplement what has been our traditional forest industry. That has been the creation of community forests. It's not the only thing we've done, but it's a very important thing. When a community like McBride can end up with a $2 million bank account because of a community forest, it's obviously paying off and providing some direct benefit. So the answer to your question is, as the sector emerges, we need to look at a new forest industry as well. We do need to look at things like value-added, bioenergy, looking at using our fiber, looking at planting trees, looking at building buildings with wood. So, we have a very strategic plan laid out for the next number of years, but the forest sector is being hit in a way that is unprecedented in British Columbia. Community forests were one way to try to help buffer that in communities across the province.
I think the reason that the community forest had such support, one of the things that the community forest, we should remember, was a replacement for the dissolving of the salvage program, which was something that was lost when we lost our forestry office in McBride. So, just to keep things in perspective, I think we all need to remember that we used to have a salvage program. That salvage program answered a lot of the questions that were on the table tonight, including this one from this gentleman, who asked about waste wood in the forest. Right now, there's a salvage program in this area, in Valemount, that is inoperable due to the way that changes have happened. Now, not arguing for the old changes, but that system did operate well when we had a forestry office in McBride. Need to point that out.
Well, we certainly made a decision to reduce the kinds of offices that have been created across the province, not just in McBride. You're absolutely right. It was a very difficult time, and there are still people who are being impacted by that decision. But in the end of the day, those were decisions that were made based on how could we serve people at the same time as trying to actually manage what was a significant deficit in the province of British Columbia. So we made very difficult decisions. And you're right, Andrew, those were in the very first early days of our mandate in McBride. And believe me, I remember the discussions extremely well, and there are still people who remind me of it today. But what we're trying to do now is look to a future in forestry that is a very different forest industry than it was. And I'm not sure that we'll ever go back exactly the way that it has been, not here, not anywhere in the province. So our job is to look at how do we capitalize on the asset that we have, how do we retain local involvement in the forest industry, And how do we do that in a way that actually looks at a new forest product as well? So, you know it is difficult looking back and recognizing we made those tough choices. And yes, it was painful for communities, not just here, but across the province. But we had a choice. We either had to make sure British Columbia was actually going to be solvent, or all of us were going to be facing some pretty major shifts. So yes, we made shifts. Is small-scale salvage, is our small projects important? Yes, they are. And we will continue to find ways to work with local communities and small businesses and small entrepreneurs to try to make that work at the local level.
Good question.